Hi everyone, and welcome to this Energy Institute membership webinar. Thank you for tuning in, and wherever you are listening from today, I hope you are safe and well, and this is an insightful start to your week. My name is Terry. I'm the Membership Development Manager at the EI, and I'm going to talk to you today mainly about the process to apply for professional membership and registration. But I'll also be covering the different membership grades available through the EI, some of the key benefits of seeking professional recognition, and some of the specific requirements for our professional titles. The webinar is being recorded and will be added to the EI's YouTube channel afterwards, and I'll be emailing you all a link to access that. The webinar should take about 1 hour, and that will include time to ask questions. Because it's a one-way audio only webinar, if you do have any questions, please can you type those at any point in the chat function. So preferably in the chat function rather than the Q&A section. If you could type your questions there, then I will answer those at the end. And equally, if you have any issues, if you can't see the slides or you can't hear me very well, again, send me a private message and I'll try my best to fix those issues as we go through the webinar. It's quite a lot to get through, so without further ado, let's get started. Just briefly to begin, a bit about the Energy Institute itself, if you don't know much about us. Well, we are the professional body for the entire energy sector, and we bring together expertise to tackle urgent global challenges. When I say global challenges, I'm referring to the climate emergency and the growing global demand for energy. We are a registered charity and we're incorporated by Royal Charter. And what that means is that we can award chartered titles to people working in energy to give them a stamp on their energy expertise. We have around 20,000 individual members and about 200 company members, and we support all our members, not just from head office, but through our extensive branch network. We cover all sectors in energy and all disciplines. We're very much an industry-focused professional body. So it doesn't matter if you're an engineer or a technician. You might be an energy manager, an energy analyst, an environmental consultant. You might work in academia. You could be a director, manager, or officer. It doesn't matter what your role or background is, as long as you're doing the work that you do in the energy sector as a whole. Okay, that being the case, then we will be able to support you in some way. It's very likely we'll have a membership grade that is appropriate for you. And our ambition is that energy is better understood, managed, and valued. And we do that in lots of different ways. For example, by putting on the events, conferences, and webinars that we do, by holding different training courses, by helping energy people with their professional development, and of course by producing all the knowledge resources, good practice guidance, and industry standards. All of that contributes to ensuring that the energy is better understood, managed, and valued globally. A bit more about our branch network. So as well as our 13 branches up and down the UK, we also have 7 international branches in Caribbean, Ireland, Middle East, Nigeria, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Singapore. I think that's all 7. And we also have 10 young professionals networks, or YPNs. And these are groups or committees of younger energy professionals. They sit alongside our main branches, but they very much have their own voice. And they put on their own yearly programme of events and networking opportunities. To find out where your nearest branch or YPN is, you can go to our website and go to the EI Near Me section. There's a direct link at the bottom there. So moving swiftly on to our introductory membership grades. So if you're listening today and you're not yet a member with us, then this will be particularly relevant for you. So firstly, we have student membership on the left. That's for anyone who is studying, either at undergraduate, postgraduate, or PhD level, or you might be on an apprenticeship. On the right-hand side, we have affiliate membership, and that's for anyone who works in energy or just mainly has a general interest in the energy scene and they want to be kept up to date with what's going on in energy. And in the middle there, we have associate member, or AMEI. And associate member is for those who are committed to working their way up towards professional membership and registration. They want to progress, they want to develop their career in energy. So if you're listening at the moment and you are interested in applying for professional membership and registration, then the first step for you is to join as an associate member, okay? It's a mandatory first step because you have to be registered as a member with us before you can even submit an application for professional membership. Now, for all three of these grades, you can join online. Go to our website, click on Join the EI in the top corner, and follow the steps through. It will take you literally a few minutes to join. There's no assessment involved, and it will give you immediate access to all our benefits and services. There is an annual fee for all three of these grades, unless you are a student member and you're studying at one of our learning affiliates. And that's basically a university that offers courses, academic courses, that are accredited by us. Okay, next we have our three professional grades of membership. And they are fellow, or FEI, member, or MEI, and technician member, or TMEI. Fellow is the highest grade of membership that we can award. It's for those that have worked at a senior level for a number of years in energy. Fellows are the leaders in industry, they drive the profession. They'll have an excellent level of leadership and management skills and an advanced knowledge of the energy sector as a whole. Member is for all experienced, competent professionals working in energy. Members are innovators, they are often experts in their field or discipline. Members will also have a very good level of leadership and management skills, both of people and of work, and they'll have a broad knowledge of the energy sector as a whole. And last, but by no means least, we have technician member, which essentially is for technicians, for the people that make things work at ground level. They're solving practical technical problems, and they may, they don't have to be, but they may be involved in the supervision and management of others. But like the other two grades, technician members will also have a good knowledge of the wider energy scene. So for these three grades of professional membership, you can't join online. You have to put together a written application, which is put forward to our membership panel for a formal assessment. Okay, there's a lot more on that coming up, and there's a link, a web link there at the bottom of the slide to take you to our membership page. Okay, in terms of the membership journey, this shows a typical pathway to professional membership. So you'd begin as a student member whilst you're studying. Once you finish your studies, you would upgrade to associate member. And once you have enough relevant experience in energy under your belt, we'd expect you to upgrade to professional membership, incorporated or chartered status. It's not the only route to professional membership, but it is a typical one. And of course, it's absolutely fine if you come straight in at associate member and then upgrade when you're ready. If you're an affiliate member with us already, and you're interested in applying for professional membership, that's also fine. Okay, you don't have to transfer across to associate member. We will accept applications from affiliate members, although you may want to benefit from some of the specific benefits that are geared towards associate members. Okay, I'm now going to explain as best I can the different combinations of professional grades and registrations that you can apply for. And if you're still not sure about it afterwards, feel free to ask a question in the chat box or approach me separately afterwards. So on the left-hand side there, we have our 3 professional grades of membership, which I've already discussed. And you can absolutely apply for one of those on its own, okay? You can apply for just member, MEI, and lots of people do exactly that, okay? That in itself is a form of professional recognition that will certify your experience in energy. In the middle section, we have titles that we are licensed to award. So we're licensed by the Engineering Council to award Chartered Engineer or CEnv registration, Incorporated Engineer or IEnv registration, and Engineering Technician or EngTech registration. And we're also licensed by the Society for the Environment to award Chartered Environmentalist or CEnv registration. And on the right-hand side, we have our 3 exclusive chartered titles: Chartered Energy Engineer, Chartered Petroleum Engineer, and Chartered Energy Manager. So you can't get those anywhere else or with any other professional body. You can only get those with the Energy Institute. Now, unless you're already a professional member with us, you cannot apply for one of these additional registrations on its own through us. Okay, so you can, for example, just apply for Incorporated Engineer with the Energy Institute. You need to apply for those additional registrations together at the same time as one of our professional grades of membership. And I think that's how it works with most professional bodies. So if you did want to apply for IEng or Chartered Environmentalist or Chartered Energy Manager, then you would also need to apply for member or fellow. Okay, if you're very senior in energy, then you might want to apply for fellow rather than member. Engineering technician very much comes hand in hand with technician member, TMEI, because of the similarity between the roles and the competencies we're looking for. You would normally apply for engineering technician with technician member or technician member on its own. For Chartered Energy Engineer and Chartered Petroleum Engineer, you need to apply for those in conjunction with CEng, Chartered Engineer registration. And as you know, you can't get CEng without also applying for a professional grade of membership. So let's just take a step back for a moment. Let's say you're interested in applying for Chartered Energy Engineer, which probably remains one of our most popular in-demand applications. You would also need to apply for Chartered Engineer and member or fellow. So in essence, you'd be applying for 3 titles there, but it will only be one integrated application. You're not making 3 separate applications, you're making one application for all 3 titles. Okay, so we try to make it as straightforward as possible, but you'll be demonstrating different sets of competencies to prove that you are eligible for those grades. Okay, I hope that's helped to clarify it a little bit. But as I said, if you're still not sure, then feel free to type a question in the chat box and I will answer those at the end. Before we move on to the application process, I just wanted to highlight some of the key benefits of seeking professional recognition, because I know some of you will be thinking, well, you know, that's all great, but what's the point? You know, what's in it for me? How will I benefit from it? And we've actually asked our professional members this, and we've collected testimonials which are available on our website. And two of the things that crop up again and again are the fact that it can help to advance your career and credibility. It can increase your credibility with peers, clients, and other people. So in terms of advancing your career, it basically shows employers that you have the competence, the expertise, and the work ethic that's required. Okay, it looks really good on your CV, and it can also help you to stand out if you are perhaps going for a promotion or another job, and you have a professional membership or a chartered title, and the other candidates don't. You know, that could give you the edge. That could help you to stand out. It's also quite a robust peer review process. Employers know this, you know, industry knows this. You're being, you know, externally validated, if you like, by experienced energy professionals. Okay, and so that's very impressive. That's a great achievement. And there could be a financial reward too. Some companies do reward staff or pay you more if you have professional recognition. And it can give you greater influence within industry, and we've already talked about how it can increase your credibility. Our charter titles are not just recognised in the UK, they're recognised internationally, so it does carry considerable prestige. And it could be that you're given new opportunities that you weren't before. It could unlock some doors that weren't available, weren't open to you previously. And of course, it's a mark of your commitment to professionalism and best practice in energy. Okay, so there are lots of reasons. There are lots of positives, no negatives. It's essentially a really good thing for you personally and professionally. Okay, and there is proof of that from our existing professional members if you have a look at some of their testimonials on our website. Okay, just a very, very quick 60-second break before we move on to the application process. So if you do need to digest some of that information, type a question or top up your drink, you can do so. Okay, it's great to see some questions flying in already. As I said, we'll be covering some of the sort of more specific requirements for our chartered titles. That's coming up later, and I will answer all those questions if I can at the end. Okay, so moving on to the application process then. So let's say you're ready to apply now. You know which grades or registrations you're going to apply for. What do you do? Firstly, you need to download an application pack. So if you go to the membership page of our website, find the box for the grade or registration that you're interested in, download the pack from there, and that application pack contains everything you need to apply, okay? All the forms that you need to fill out, including 2 sets of guidance notes. And it's imperative that you read and study that guidance before you start your application, okay? It will put you in good stead. One set of guidance notes will be very specific to the title that you're applying for. And the other set of guidance notes is more general. It's called How to Put Together Your Application. Complete parts A and parts B. I'm going to go through that in just a second. Make sure you proofread your application, get your sponsors to check through your application. and then when it's ready, please email it to us. Please don't post it, please email it to us at professionals@energyinst.org. I know that text is quite small there, but that email address is included in the application form in the pack. Okay, so what do parts A and B comprise then? So first of all, for part A, you'll need to fill in an application form. This will be very simple. It's just entering your personal details, your qualifications and career history. You need to make sure you sign the form, and crucially, you need to just indicate clearly which grade or grades, plural, you're applying for. In almost all cases, you'll need 2 sponsor references. And there is a sponsor reference form in the pack that your sponsors need to fill out and sign. And on that form, there's a box where they must add supporting comments. And the more detailed those comments, the better. Okay, sometimes applications are returned because the sponsors haven't written enough. So the more details they provide, the better. Your sponsors don't need to be Energy Institute members necessarily, but they do have to be registered at an equivalent grade or higher to the one you're applying for. So earlier I went through the introductory grades of membership. So if someone is registered at an introductory grade with us or with another professional body, if it's CEnv or IMechE or whoever, then they wouldn't be able to sponsor you for a professional membership application. They need to be a professional member with that institution. They need to have gone through a peer review and an assessment process to get the grade. You'll need to write up a professional development review, or PDR, and there's plenty of guidance on how to approach that in the application pack. But essentially, you'll be giving an overview of your energy-related career, an insight into the different roles that you've held in energy, which clearly shows your progression as an energy professional. And we highly recommend that you cross-reference the specific competencies for the grade against some of the responses in your PDR. And we're gonna come on to competencies in a little while. We'll need a CPD record from you, or continuing professional development. Now, there are 2 ways to record your CPD with us. You can use a paper template form, which again is included in the pack, or you can use My Career Path, which is our online professional development tracking tool. It's free for EI members to use. And what's great about My Career Path is that you can create a profile against a registration. So you could create a profile against CEnv, for instance. And then you can log your CPD activities against the specific competencies that we're looking for. It's structured against those competencies. So that will help you massively when you come to apply. Generally, we recommend that you go back 2, maybe 3 years when recording your CPD activities. You don't need to go back much further than that, unless there is something that you've done that's really relevant, that really supports your application, and you did it 10 years ago, fine, put that in, add that in. And we also need to know your future CPD plan. So moving forward, how do you intend to maintain your energy-related competence? How do you intend to engage with the EI and its activities? Now, I don't think it's not included in the application pack, but we have produced a really comprehensive CPD guide. It's called The Best You Can Be, and you can download that from the CPD section of our website. And I'd advise you to do that because one thing that guide explains is that CPD encompasses a huge range of different activities. It's not just a master's degree or a technical training course. There's so much more, you'd be surprised. There's so much more you can include. We'll need an organisational chart from you just to show visually to whom you report and who reports to you. basically where you sit within the company. We'll need copies of your academic certificates and photo ID. We don't need originals, we just need copies. And those copies need to be signed as true and accurate by someone else of professional standing, so ideally one of your sponsors. Now, we do realise that at the moment it's very hard, almost impossible to see people face to face and get people to sign documents for you. So that's fine. We can request those later. So if you can't get signed copies of your academic certificates and photo ID, no problem. We can do that later. The photo ID should be a suitable form of ID. So driver's license, passport, that sort of thing, which needs to show your photo, date of birth, and signature. And there's an application fee for each of our grades and registrations. While we're on the topic, I saw a question flash up about organisational chart. If for whatever reason you can't supply an organisational chart because perhaps you're working as a consultant, no problem. This comes up quite a lot. Essentially, you can describe your relationships with colleagues, with clients, your leadership and management skills. You can explain all that in writing in your PDR, okay, instead of supplying an organisational chart. Part B will always be the competence grid. And there is a competence grid that you need to fill out for every grade and registration that's on offer. So if, for example, you were applying for member and chartered energy manager, you would need to complete a competence grid for member and another one for chartered energy manager, because the competencies are very different between the two. We've already talked a lot about competence. Well, here they are at a top level, okay? So the competencies will normally be listed A to E. So you can see the sorts of things that you'll need to demonstrate. The A competencies are all about your knowledge and understanding of energy, engineering, sustainability, whatever it is. The B competencies are about how you apply that knowledge and skill and your skills in your workplace to your daily job. You'll need to demonstrate your leadership and management skills, your communication and interpersonal skills, and also your commitment to professional standards, the E competencies, which is about adhering to health and safety regulations, codes of conduct, your training, CPD, that sort of thing. But what happens with these competencies is that they are broken down further. Okay, so the A competence becomes A1, A2, the B competence becomes B1, B2, etc. Okay, and that happens for all of the competencies A to E. So what you need to do in the competence grid, this is an example from the MEI competence grid, is you need to, on the right-hand side there, add 2, maybe 3 really detailed, relevant examples of how you meet that competence. Okay, this is the competence grid is arguably the most important part of your application, because it's what you're being assessed on above all else. Your ability to demonstrate the specific competencies. And our assessors will be looking for a good level of detail in your examples. Okay, so as well as saying what you did to demonstrate that competence, also tell them why you decided that, how you went about it, and what you achieved as a result. Okay, that's the sort of level of detail they're looking for. It's not just a tick box exercise to agree with each of the competencies. It's much better to have 2 or 3 really detailed examples as opposed to, I don't know, 7 or 8 bullet points, which are just one-liners. Okay, it's much better to provide a couple of really good detailed examples. And this is an example of a CEnv competence grid, okay? Just to reiterate again, that there is a grid, a competence grid for every grade and professional registration. And what you'll see here in the CEnv competence grid is that we've provided some pointers, if you like, some bullet points to give you some direction and to give you some ideas about what you could write about, referring to your own circumstances. You don't have to use those. You know, by all means, you could write something there that you feel is definitely relevant, and we haven't included in the bullet points. There's no problem with that at all. Okay, so this has come, straight from our assessors. Some sort of classic do's and don'ts when writing your professional development review and competence grid. Always write in the first person. Our assessors want to know about you, what you've done, and what your personal contribution is, not that of your team or company. We've talked about level of detail, but also include facts and figures and statistics if you can. Okay, so if you've managed a project and you're allowed to, include the budget of that project. How many people exactly did you lead in that project team? Do try to pick different examples to demonstrate the competencies. Now, we completely understand that one example you give can demonstrate multiple competencies. Okay, that's fine. That's often the case. One example can be used to demonstrate multiple competencies. But if you can, try to pick some different examples because it shows the depth and breadth of your experience, and that can only strengthen your application. Only include supplementary information if it's relevant. Try not to include loads and loads of supplementary evidence. Our assessors are volunteers. They have time to read through lots and lots of information. But we always say it's more important to write a good quality PDR and competence grid rather than point them towards other supplementary documents. Don't forget to proofread your application more than once, get your sponsors to check it. A CV won't do. Your PDR is much more than a CV. Don't plagiarize because that will be spotted, and don't leave any gaps in the grid. Okay, to qualify for that grade or registration, you need to demonstrate all of the competencies. And there is an advised word count in the guidance notes, so try not to go well over or under that. It's about finding a balance between being succinct and relevant and saying enough to address that competence. With regards to the assessment process, when you submit your application, our membership team will look through it first, do an initial review, let you know if anything's missing. All being well, it will go forward to our membership panel for a formal assessment. We try to pick assessors who have a similar specialism to yours, where possible. And they'll give you every opportunity to fill in any gaps, address any shortfalls. They'll give you some really detailed feedback if more information is required from you, and they will spell out which competencies might need a bit more work. It's really hard to put a time frame on it, but we normally say it would take sort of 2 to 4 months minimum. That depends on a number of factors, such as the quality of your application, the decision of the panel, whether you need an interview or not. Talking of interviews, they are mandatory for professional registrations, but if you're just applying for one of our professional grades, you might not have to do an interview, although that's at the discretion of the membership panel. And we've been doing remote interviews for a long time, even before the global pandemic, because we have candidates from all around the world. Now, if you're putting together your application as we speak, or you're close to completing it, the next deadline is just over a month away, on the 30th of April. Okay, so that's the deadline to aim for if you feel that you can make that. If it's too soon, then we have two other deadlines this year, 31st of July and the 31st of October. But if you're looking to get your professional recognition, or at least get to the interview stage in the summer, then you should really aim for the 30th of April application deadline. So put some time aside and get cracking with it if you can. The interview, it normally lasts between 45 and 75 minutes. The important thing to remember here is it's a discussion with your peers. There's no exam or presentation required. It's purely a discussion with your peers who will be trained, suitably qualified interviewers. And they'll be asking you about your application, your knowledge, and they'll always be looking, keeping a close eye on the competencies when they ask you questions. So take that into account when you're answering the questions in the interview. Always think about the specific competencies that you've needed to demonstrate. Okay, another very quick break, and then we're going to move on to some of the sort of specific requirements for our professional titles. Okay, so grab a drink and again, try and digest some of the information that we've gone through, and then we'll get right back on it. Okay, so you've learned about the different membership grades available. You've learned about the overall application process. Now we're going to go through your options and some of the specific requirements. So first of all, you might not know there is a quicker professional registrants route to member MEI and technician member TMEI. Okay, this is a quicker, streamlined route. It just requires an application form, a CV, copy of your photographic ID, and on the application form, you'll need to give an overview of your experience in energy. To qualify for the professional registrants route, so if you are already registered as a chartered engineer, incorporated engineer, or chartered environmentalist with any UK professional body or Engineers Ireland, then you would be eligible for the professional registrants route to member MEI, and you need to be working in energy. If you're already registered as an engineering technician, EngTech, with a UK professional body, and you're working in energy, then you would be eligible for the professional registrants route to technician member or TMEI. Okay, so if that applies to you, that's something definitely worth considering. Okay, we're going to spend the next couple of minutes on the engineering titles to start off with. So chartered engineer, incorporated engineer, and engineering technician. Now, the first important thing to note about these titles is that there is an educational standard that you need to meet. It's different for all three, and it's included on the slide there. I won't waste time by reading them out, but so I'll give you a moment to have a look at what that educational standard is. And how it works is that you or we need to figure out whether your qualifications are accredited for CEnv, iEng, or EngTech, either by the Engineering Council, who have defined the educational standard, or under any international agreements, such as the Washington Accord or Sydney Accord. Okay, so it could be that if you obtained your qualifications internationally, they could be recognised as equivalent to a UK accredited qualification. If it turns out they are accredited, fantastic. You don't need to do any extra work. You can go straight onto that full CEnv, iEng, or EngTech application, fill out all the forms, demonstrate the competencies as we've been talking about. If they're not accredited, either partially or at all, then you'll need to apply for interim registration first. Okay, every professional body will have a route or a process for those that don't have accredited qualifications. Now, another way to look at this in terms of applying for an engineering title is in two parts or two halves. The first half, you need to demonstrate the foundation technical knowledge, skill and understanding, or in other words, the educational bit. And that's why we have interim registration. The second half, the second part, is demonstrating the professional competence and commitment, or in other words, the experience bit. Okay, demonstrating all those competencies for CEnv, iEng, or EngTech. Okay, so if you don't have accredited qualifications, you have to do interim registration first. And we'll obviously help you out with this. So to apply for interim registration, again, go to the membership page of our website, find the box for interim registration, download the form. It's a very basic form to fill out, whereby you'll list the qualifications that you have. So course title, where you studied, and when. Send that into our professional membership team, and they will check for you. They'll do those checks for you. They will find out if your qualifications are accredited or not for that engineering title that you're applying for. If they are, you can be awarded interim registration straight away if you wish. It's not compulsory. And you can proceed to the full application for CEnv. If they're not accredited, then you need to complete the process for interim registration. And that involves filling out what we call a self-assessment form. It's kind of like another grid where you need to prove that you have the equivalent knowledge and understanding of engineering principles as someone who has done an accredited qualification. Okay, it's called a self-assessment form, and our professional membership team will advise which form you need to fill out and how much of it. If you want to make a head start and have and look yourself to see whether your qualifications are accredited, you can go to the Engineering Council website, and they have a very good accredited course search on there. So you can have a look, find out if there are any sort of complex notes next to your qualification. You can contact the Engineering Council and seek clarification. This is a brief profile of a chartered engineer. So chartered engineers working in energy are professionals who develop solutions to energy engineering problems using new or existing technologies through innovation, creativity, and change. Or they may have technical accountability for complex systems with significant levels of risk. That's chartered engineer in a nutshell. But if you have a look at the guidance notes in the application pack, and you have a look at the Part B competence grid for CEnv, you'll see that there's a lot more to it than that. There are lots of different things that a chartered engineer does or may do, and that's a good way of determining whether it's the chartered title for you. Incorporated engineer, or iEng. So incorporated engineers working in energy are typically involved in managing and maintaining applications, working with current and developing technologies. It could be involved in any part of the energy sector, from oil and gas to renewables, engineering design to operations. Same thing applies here. Have a look at the guidance notes in the application pack and the competence grid for more information about the sort of level of work expected of an incorporated engineer. And lastly, a profile for engineering technician, or EngTech. Now, I highly recommend that you have a look at UK spec, which is the standard of competence and commitment that's required for registration as a CEnv, iEng, or EngTech, produced by the Engineering Council. And we, all the professional bodies, we're licensed by the Engineering Council, so we go off UK spec. So have a look at that on the Engineering Council website. There's a very good section on there where they have CEnv, iEng, and EngTech next to each other. Okay, so you can compare and contrast between the three. So if you're not sure which one's most suitable, if you feel that your experience is suited to more than one, have a look at that section of the UK spec, and that might help you determine which registration is most appropriate. And there's a web link there on the slide which will take you to UK spec. So to summarise, for the 3 engineering titles, you need to meet the educational standard, but we have interim registration if your qualifications are not accredited. Okay, so if they're not accredited, you can still apply. I would say the majority of candidates now don't have accredited qualifications. You need to have relevant practical experience. That's all about demonstrating the competencies. You need to abide by our code of conduct, and you'll find a copy in the application pack. You need to commit to maintaining your CPD. Every year, we will do a random request for up-to-date CPD records from members. You need to join as a professional member at the same time, unless you already are. And for CEnv, as you now know, you need to also apply for either Chartered Energy Engineer or Chartered Petroleum Engineer. And again, if you have a look at the guidance notes, there's a more detailed profile of what a Chartered Energy Engineer is and what a Chartered Petroleum Engineer is, okay? There are quite a few differences between the two. Next up, we have Chartered Energy Manager. And you can see a profile of a Chartered Energy Manager there. Along with Chartered Environmentalist, these titles are becoming more in demand. We're getting more applications for these titles as there is more focus on the energy transition and more awareness of the climate emergency. So essentially for Chartered Energy Manager, you'll be providing advice on energy use. You'll be involved with energy efficiency and carbon reduction. You'll have a good knowledge of market supply. You might be analysing and organising organisations' energy performance. And again, you'll have a good level of leadership and management skills. Now, we do offer some energy management training courses. Have a look at those on the relevant section of our website. It's not a prerequisite to do our energy management training before applying for Chartered Energy Manager, but it would certainly help demonstrate some of the knowledge and understanding required. And if you are a member with us, you'll get a discounted rate to sign up for those training courses. The requirements for Chartered Energy Manager: there's no educational standard that you need to meet for this title, but of course you do need to have relevant practical experience in energy management. The other requirements are the same: abiding by our code of conduct, maintaining your CPD, and joining as a professional member with us. We're also approved by the Environment Agency to award ESOS lead assessor status. So if you apply for Chartered Energy Manager, you'll see that you also have the option to apply for ESOS lead assessor status. So this might be something that's relevant for you if you are providing energy advice in-house or externally as a consultant. And lastly, Chartered Environmentalist. Again, you can see a profile of a Chartered Environmentalist here. And our Chartered Environmentalists do work in quite a broad range of different roles. We have sustainability consultants and managers, research directors, environmental coordinators, lots of different types of roles that suit the Chartered Environmentalist title. CEnv registration, you do need to have a relevant master's degree or equivalent. There's more information about that in the guidance notes. But if you don't have a relevant master's degree, then you need to demonstrate that you have developed master's level knowledge of energy and sustainability in other ways. So, for example, through other academic achievements, through self-directed learning, work-based experience, that sort of thing. There are other ways to demonstrate that you have master's level, relevant master's level knowledge if you don't have a master's degree in the environment or sustainability. The other requirements are the same as all our other titles. So relevant experience, abiding by the code of conduct, maintaining your CPD, and joining as a professional member. But you'll also need to abide by the Society for the Environment's Code of Ethics, because we are licensed by the Society for the Environment to award this title. We're coming to the end of the webinar now. Just before we move on to questions, what's the next step? What do you need to do next? And this will be different for everyone listening, because you'll be at various stages of your career and you might have started your application already. Join as a member. If you haven't already done so, go online and join and take advantage of all the benefits and resources that are available to you. Get more involved, find out if there's another webinar you can sign up for, and hopefully in the future, an actual face-to-face event and some networking opportunities. Update your CPD as you go. It's one thing we always advise, is that it's so hard to fill in a CPD form all at once, remembering what you've done over the years. So we always recommend you to fill out your CPD form as you go. Whether you're ready or not now, download the application pack, have a look at the guidance. Absolutely no harm in having a look at the requirements and the competencies that are required. It will give you something to work towards if you're not quite ready to apply. Have a look if there is an educational requirement. There are ways you can find out if your qualifications are accredited. And it's a great idea to do a gap analysis exercise. Okay, use that Part B competence grid. If you're not sure whether you're ready to apply yet, start mapping your qualifications, your experience, your skills, your achievements against those competencies. Okay, that's a good way of determining whether you're ready to apply, whether that registration is suitable for you or not. If there are lots of gaps, then you know that there's some work for you to do. You might need some additional professional development. You could speak to your manager or your employer about filling in those gaps and gaining the necessary experience. And the biggest challenge is often finding the time, actually finding the time to sit down and put together and write up your application. So, try and put some time aside, put some time in your diary to do exactly that. There is plenty of help available. Have a look at the guidance notes online in the application packs. Talk to your sponsors, and they may be able to advise you, especially if they've been through the process themselves. Talk to your mentor. So we actually launched our brand new mentoring scheme. It's called EI Connect. We launched it literally a couple of weeks ago. It's exclusively for professional members and associate members. So if you don't have a mentor and you would like one, then go to our website, go to the membership and careers section and sign up for that. Sign up for EI Connect, because one thing a mentor can help you with is applying for professional membership and registration, as well as a number of other things. And talk to us. If you've got any questions, if you're not sure about anything, contact the EI's membership team. There's an email address and a telephone number there. And that actually concludes the webinar. a lot of information to take in there. If you're leaving us at this point, thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it useful, and we look forward to receiving an application from you soon. Hopefully, fingers crossed, by the 30th of April, which is the next deadline. If you're staying with us for questions, just give me a couple of minutes and I'll have a look through those questions now. But if you are leaving, thank you very much. Okay, so plenty of questions come through, which is fantastic. Thank you. Just going through some of the older ones now. Apologies for overrunning a little bit, just by a minute. Okay, so first question is about branches. So to find out about your local branch, to find out where your nearest branch or YPN is, go to our website. At the top, you'll see some tabs. Go to click on EI near me, and from there you'll be able to find out where your nearest branch or YPN is. And when you're taken to that page for that branch, you can see who's on the committee. There's an email address, so you could contact them if you'd like to get involved, and you'll be able to see any upcoming events or activities. Question here about applying for chartered engineer and or the additional chartered energy engineer or chartered petroleum engineer titles. So no, you can't apply just for chartered engineer with the Energy Institute, or you can't apply for membership and chartered engineer without also applying for either chartered energy engineer or chartered petroleum engineer. You have to pick one of those two additional titles to apply for together with CEnv. And when you do, one thing perhaps didn't mention is that you don't need to demonstrate an additional set of competencies for chartered energy engineer or chartered petroleum engineer. You'll only be demonstrating the CEnv competencies, but you'll obviously be bringing out your energy engineering or your petroleum engineering experience and your skills. Okay, you'll be demonstrating the competencies from an energy related perspective. Question about the how many years experience you'll need for professional or chartered membership. So we normally recommend that you have 4 years minimum, but that's not actually a hard and fast rule, and that's because it's more about demonstration of competence than it is number of years served. And what I mean by that is that if you can comfortably demonstrate all the competencies for CEnv or whatever registration it is, but you don't have 4 years experience yet, you can still apply. You know, you're welcome to apply. And looking at it in another way, if you had 7 or 8 years experience in engineering or energy, but you couldn't demonstrate all the competencies, you know, then you're not quite ready to apply. So it's best to look at it as ask yourself, can I demonstrate all the competencies? Do I meet all the requirements? As opposed to how many years experience do I have? And I will just say here, if I don't have time to answer your question or I can't answer it right now, then I will take a note and I'll email you separately. Okay. Okay, another question about a number of years experience, this time for fellow. I guess it's the same situation. If you feel that you can demonstrate all the competencies for fellow and you've worked at a senior level for a number of years and you have a good level of leadership and management skills, and you can demonstrate that in your application, then yes, you are welcome to apply for fellowship. No time period. So if you're an associate member with us, there is no time period before you can upgrade to professional membership. Okay. So once you've joined as an associate member, you can upgrade at any point after that, as long as you have the relevant experience and you meet all the requirements. You don't have to wait a certain amount of time as an associate member before upgrading. Question here about getting your professional qualifications assessed by the EI. So I'm presuming here that so if you are applying for one of the engineering titles and you want to know whether your qualifications are accredited or not, then as I said, you can fill in the form for interim registration, list your qualifications on there, and we will check that for you and find out if your qualifications are accredited or not, CEnv, iEng or EngTech, and let you know what the next step would be. Question here about associate member, and the answer is yes, it is mandatory to be a member with us before you can submit an application for professional membership and registration. Okay, so if you're not a member yet, you have to join as an associate member first, or AMEI, and then you can start your application for professional membership. It's a bit of a no-brainer if you think about it, because it will give you immediate access to all the benefits and services that we offer. It shows a commitment to membership, and you'll never overpay for membership. So there is an annual fee for associate member. It's 88 if you have over 5 years experience, £64 if you have less than 5 years experience. But if you are elected as a professional member later in the year, we will balance the election fee against the fee you've already paid to join as an associate member. Okay, so we'll ensure that you never pay twice or overpay for your membership. No, there would never be a scenario where someone is accepted for CEnv but not energy engineer or petroleum engineer, because as I mentioned, they go together, they come hand in hand. So you'll either be elected as a CEnv and chartered energy engineer or chartered petroleum engineer, or the panel might decide that more information is required first, so they'll bounce it back to you and you'll need to supply further evidence. If you do not have an engineering qualification, that doesn't stop you from applying for chartered engineer and chartered energy engineer. That's where interim registration comes into play. So interim registration is in place, and it's a good thing. It's in place for those that don't have engineering qualifications at all, or they don't have accredited qualifications. Okay, it doesn't stop you from applying. It just means that there's a bit of extra work to do to demonstrate and to prove that you have equivalent knowledge and understanding of engineering as someone who has done an accredited qualification in engineering. Question here about CPD, or continuing professional development, and how far to go back. I think I covered that, but we would normally recommend that you should go back 2, maybe 3 years at most, and think about what the most relevant CPD activities that you've undertaken in that period. However, if you've done something that really supports your application, that is relevant, and you did it a long time ago, many years ago, you are still welcome to include that in your CPD record. Okay. And don't forget to also, as well as looking back, look forward. And you need to also explain what your future CPD plan is. So what are you going to do in the short and longer term in terms of maintaining your competence as an energy professional, energy manager, environmentalist, whatever it may be. Question about the organisational chart. Again, I think I covered this, but if you are a self-employed consultant, then obviously it's quite a challenge to, well, it's not possible to supply an organisational chart. So if you're a self-employed consultant, you know, our assessors will see that in your application. But just make sure in your professional development review and your competence grid, just make sure that you're explaining in writing about, you know, any leadership and management skills you've got, any interpersonal skills you've got, and whether in the past, you know, you might not have an organisational chart presently, but in the past you might have managed people, you might have managed teams. So just try and give our assessors an insight into that in writing if you can't supply an organogram. And yes, you can apply for professional membership if you're between roles or currently unemployed. Question here about academic certificates. There's no special requirement for certificates of overseas institutions. So obviously one of the requirements is to supply copies of your academic certificates. And we're just referring there to the main academic ones that you have. So, you know, master's qualification, bachelor's, PhD, MBA, higher national diploma or higher national certificate. We don't need copies of your, like in the UK, A-levels or GCSE certificates or anything like that. We don't need reams and reams of training certificates. You don't need to supply those. If you're a member of a professional body, another professional body, then it's definitely worth supplying a copy of that certificate, whether that's in the UK or internationally. I think sometimes with academic certificates from overseas, I think sometimes we may need to ask for a translation if it's not in English, or a transcript of some kind, just something that clearly states, you know, what the qualification is, what the course title is, where you did it, etc. Question about the competence grid and how much detail you should provide. So first bit of advice is to have a look at the guidance notes in the application pack. I think there's a section on how to approach your PDR and how to approach your competence grid. As I said, it's not a tick box exercise. You know, don't just put loads of bullet points with one-liners. It's much better to provide 1, 2, or 3 really detailed examples to demonstrate each of the competencies. So to demonstrate A1 and to demonstrate A2, etc. And try and go into, you know, a good level of detail. Don't just say what you did to demonstrate that competence. Explain how you went about that. You know, what was your thought process? And what was the outcome? What did you achieve as a result? That's the sort of level of detail our assessors are generally looking for. And there is some advice on word count in the guidance notes. So, you know, try and adhere to that as best you can. You can use the same project. You can refer to the same project to demonstrate more than one competence. This happens quite often. You know, you can use an example to demonstrate multiple competencies. That naturally is the case. But if you can, you know, try and include as many different examples as you can to show the depth and breadth of your experience. It's budget costs, budgets of projects and that sort of thing, financial figures. If it is difficult to make public, no problem. You don't have to include those. If it's sensitive information, then don't include it, and it won't be viewed negatively by our assessors. Okay, they completely understand that that's the case sometimes. You can apply for professional membership separately or first before applying for a professional registration. That does happen quite often. Some candidates do find that they're ready for member, MEI, but they're not quite ready for one of our chartered titles, for example. So you can apply for a professional membership now and an additional registration later. That does happen. That's ultimately, your decision to make. If you are ready to apply for both, we'd advise that you apply for both, because you only have to then go through the assessment process once. You only have to pay the application fees once. And that application fee, unfortunately, is not refundable. Once you've paid the application fee is essentially in place to so that we can do all the admin that's involved, do the review by the membership team and the formal review by the membership panel. So that application fee wouldn't be reimbursed if your application was unsuccessful. But don't forget, very rarely will the panel reject an application outright. They'll give you every opportunity to address any shortfalls, fill in any gaps, provide more information, and then resubmit. Okay, or you might need to do some more professional development or gain more experience over a longer period of time. Any questions about specific qualifications? I wouldn't be able to answer here and now, because it obviously takes some time to go away and find out if they are accredited. So it's what I've advised before. Feel free to email me separately, or have a look at interim registration and fill in that application form where you list your qualifications. That's the best way to find out from us if your qualifications are accredited or not. And as I said, you can make a head start if you wish. If you're trying to find out if your engineering qualifications are accredited, have a look at the Engineering Council website where there is an accredited course search. Sometimes it might be the case that your bachelor's is accredited, but your master's isn't. Or the other way around, you might have an accredited MSc, but you don't have an accredited bachelor's. In both those scenarios, you would have to apply for interim registration first, but you'd essentially only have to do half of the self-assessment form. Okay, the self-assessment form is normally split between master's level learning outcomes and honours level learning outcomes. If you had an accredited bachelor's degree, but you didn't have an accredited master's, you didn't have the further learning part, then you would be asked on that self-assessment form just to demonstrate the master's level learning outcomes. That's how it works in summary. We don't, it's a question we get asked quite often, but we do not provide exemplar or examples of how to fill out the competence grid, actual answers to the competencies. And that's mainly because it's a very individual thing. So there's plenty of general guidance on how you should approach your PDR or your competence grid, but we don't provide actual examples from previous applicants of how that's been filled out. The quicker route, the professional registrants route that I discussed to MEI, is for those who are registered either as a chartered engineer, incorporated engineer, or chartered environmentalist with a UK professional body or Engineers Island. You have to be registered as one of those to be eligible for the quicker professional registrants route to MEI. Okay, so if you are, then yes, if you meet that requirement, you are eligible and you have to be working in the energy sector. So if you were an affiliate member with us, working in energy, and you completed some energy management training courses with us, you wouldn't be eligible for the professional registrants route to MEI, unless, as I said, you're a CEnv, IEng, or CEnv elsewhere. You do have the option to apply for both Chartered Energy Engineer and Chartered Petroleum Engineer, but it's very rare. I think most people will choose one or the other. And actually, when you look at the description, the detailed description in the guidance for Chartered Energy Engineer, it's more broad. It kind of covers some of the aspects of petroleum engineer. So if you work sort of more specifically in petroleum engineering, then Chartered Petroleum Engineer is probably more relevant. But if your work branches out into other areas of energy, the wider energy scene, maybe that's renewables or whatever, then probably Chartered Energy Engineer is the one that you should be opting for. Another question about CPD. There isn't a recommended number of hours or points. We don't work on the hours or point system. It's just a case of including the CPD activity, and also, I didn't mention this, also writing or explaining how you've used the knowledge and understanding gained from that CPD activity in the work that you do in your workplace. That's actually a column on the CPD form that we provide in the application pack. So as well as saying what you did in terms of CPD, also say how you've applied that. Okay, I'm really sorry. There are so many questions here that I could have been asked. Unfortunately, we've run way over time. So what I'll do is I'll take a note of those questions that I haven't answered yet, and I will email you separately to address those questions. Also, don't forget that this webinar has been recorded. Okay, so it will be added to the EI's YouTube channel after today. So you'll be able to listen again if you need, revisit any of the slides that came up. And I'll be emailing you all a link to access that. Okay, so I'm very sorry, but I must bring the webinar to an end at this point. Thank you very much for tuning in and taking some time to listen today. I wish you all the best, and we look forward to receiving an application from you very soon. Thank you.